Hello everyone, this is Venom, and we are back. We are finally here with the subclass ability breakdown for the final shape. This is the tuning preview. There's a lot of information here. It goes down like to every single ability there is, class by class. I'm not going to go through absolutely everything. I'm just going to hit the bigger key points here. Let me get the opener out of the way. It says, hey folks, Combat Gameplay Team here for a rundown of ability changes coming with the launch of the final shape in just a few short weeks. Just 2 weeks now. As a warning, this is one of our largest balance patches in recent years, so you may want to settle in for a long read. Here's a brief overview of what we'll be covering today. There are some changes, so I'm going to say that. Updates to a large portion of the Stasis ability suite, including our new keyword Frost Armor, which we've all been waiting to find out what it does, along with the Stasis ability rework. We've been waiting for that for a while. Their near future of Will of Radiance and Ward of Dawn in the final shape. And subclass by subclass breakdown of balance changes to aspects, abilities, and fragments, including but not limited to those included with Prismatic. Now, let's go with the Stasis subclass first. It says, let's start with Stasis. Shortly after release of Stasis, we shifted focus to the back-to-back launch of the Bungie 30th Anniversary Pack and Void 3.0, and we haven't really let up on the gas since. As a result, other than smaller changes we've been able to make here and there, it's been difficult to evaluate the relationship between Stasis and our other damage types and make larger feature-level updates to it. This was something we wanted to change with the final shape. In particular, we wanted to upgrade the Stasis Shard Overshield that lived on the fringes of the damage type to make it a full-on keyword that we could incorporate into abilities, armor, and weapons. So they basically wanted to just take that Stasis Overshield and make it into the keyword. They turned it into Frost Armor. They made it different from the Void Overshield and actually made it its own identity. So, Frost Armor is a stacking buff that reduces incoming damage with greater damage reduction as your stacks increase. At launch, Frost Armor will be granted from a variety of sources, including the Tectonic, Grim, Glacial Harvest aspects, fragments, and exotic armor. By default, you can build to a maximum number of 5 stacks of Frost Armor that lasts 9 seconds. I thought it was 6 in my last video. I apologize, that was wrong. But with the newly reworked Whisper of Rhyme fragment, Frost Armor's maximum lifetime increases to 13 seconds and can build up to a maximum of 8 stacks. Unlike the Stasis Shard or Overshield, Frost Armor remains active when your super's cast, though its effectiveness is significantly lower than while your super is active. Sorry. I did not know that the Stasis Overshield went away when you cast your super, but that's because we haven't been using Stasis a lot. Now, this is a new Frost Armor keyword. You are fortified by layers of durable stasis matter, reducing incoming damage. Frost Armor damage resistance grows stronger as you gain additional stacks. It reduces damage from PvE combatants by 4.5% per stack, and from enemy players by 2% per stack. So obviously you want to get maximum stacks. By default, for PvP, it's going to be a 10% reduction, and then for PvE, it's going to be 22.5%, it looks like, at the base. 22.5. Whisper of Rhyme reworked. No longer grants a Stasis Shard Overshield when collecting a Stasis Shard. Now increases the maximum duration and stack count of your Frost Armor. Now, one long-standing piece of feedback we received is that Stasis Shards felt too limited. Yes, when they got rid of, when they changed up the mods, when they came out with mods 2.0 or 3.0, whatever we're up to, Stasis Shards basically fell off. I forgot the old mod was called to be used, but yeah, Stasis Shards have not been good for a few seasons now, for about a year. Here we go. One long-standing piece of feedback received that Stasis, there we go. Requiring a specific aspect to generate. Because Stasis Shards are created for all allied players at once, rather than being a shared consume resource like Tangles or local-only resource like Fire Sprites, Ionic traces or word breaches, it would be easy for the number of Stasis Shards on the field to spiral out of control if we were to make their creation intrinsic to the damage type. Instead, we're increasing the number of sources that players can build into generating them. I've never had an issue creating Stasis Shards, but the use of them has been limited, but I've never had an issue creating them. And increasing their value when collecting with a harvest aspect equipped. So yeah, I've never had an issue creating them, but it looks like they've made more ways to generate them. When Tectonic, Grim, or Glacial Harvest is equipped, in addition to their previous behavior, collecting any Stasis Shards now grants a small amount of health and a stack of Frost Armor. So Stasis Shards are going to get a dual aspect. You get automatic Frost Armor picking up a shard, and you will get a small amount of health. So dual things. It's going to be very defensive and healing-oriented perk here. Alongside this increased potency, we're also implementing a shard cooldown on rapid Stasis Shard creation. That could be an issue. This cooldown is intended to be pretty generous and primarily limits cases of oppressive behavior like triple behemoth trial squads. That could be crazy. All right, now this is all aspects. All aspects have new behaviors. While Grim, Tectonic, and Glacier Harvest are equipped, Stasis Shards grant a small amount of health and a stack of Frost Armor, so you do need to have those equipped for that to work. Large Stasis Shards from Grim Harvest grant more health and Frost Armor stacks. All Harvest aspects now have a standardized cooldown when a large number of shards are created very quickly. And with Tectonic Harvest, now creates a Stasis Shard when shattering a frozen target in addition to shattering Stasis Crystals. So, very, very interesting when you work so far. You're definitely going to want to have your Grim, Tectonic, or Glacier Harvest equipped if you're using Stasis, but let's continue on. Our intention is that Frost Armor can be granted through a variety of sources. As part of this, we've updated renewal graphs from the Hunters and Balador's Weave race, which is from the Warlocks, to directly grant Frost Armor rather than their own custom damage resistance or Stasis Overshard. So that's probably to help reduce stacking. Otherwise, you could probably have damage resistance from renewal graphs along with Frost Armor, and the other ways you can actually get some damage resistance. So it looks like that's a way to reduce stacking a little bit. Renewal Graphs are going to give you stacks of Frost Armor the longer you stay in it, and when Balador's Weavers replaces the Overshield with just straight up Frost Armor. And we talked about this in the armor preview. In fact, Balador's is actually going to give you armor or full stacks of Frost Armor when you activate your super and when your super ends, along when you put down your Rift. To help increase players' capabilities to generate Stasis Shards, we've created a brand new fragment that offers a straightforward method that can slot into many damage or many different build types. Whisper of Chill. Stasis weapon final blows have a chance to create a Stasis Shard, so that's pretty straightforward. As part of this effort, we've reworked Whisper of Chains. This fragment has been a popular choice since its inception due to its ease of use and stat bonus. However, its gameplay benefit was frequently difficult to read. As part of this effort, we've also reworked Whisper of Chains. This fragment has been a popular choice since its inception due to its ease of use and stat bonus. However, its gameplay benefit was frequently difficult to read and ran counter to core gameplay loops revolving around creating and destroying crystals. And the core human compulsion to destroy every crystal you see. Yes, it was kind of a pain in the ass to use it, because when you see a crystal, you want to automatically destroy it, so you were rarely ever getting the defensive bonus from Whisper of Change. To make Whisper of Change fully successful, it required cooperation from teammates in a way that sometimes took success out of the user's hands. This resulted in situations where, by shattering a Stasis Crystal for damage, players could unknowingly reduce their or their teammates' combat effectiveness. This introduced negative social frustration that we wanted to remove outright. We pivoted Whisper of Change to instead focus on chaining creation of Stasis Shards and Frost Armor when paired with a Harvest aspect. So those that don't know, Whisper of Change would actually make you give you damage reduction when you were standing next to a Stasis Crystal. The problem is, human nature is you see a Stasis Crystal, you want to shatter it, or you want to shatter it to do damage to enemies around you. So they basically wanted to make something that is meant to be shattered give you defenses, which it ran counterintuitive. You just never would use it that way unless you're playing like solo or something. Now it says Whisper Chains. My voice is really disappearing. No longer grants passive damage resistance when near a Stasis Crystal or a frozen target. Now grants a chance to create a Stasis Shard when defeating a target while you have one or more stacks of Frost Armor. So that's pretty cool, actually. So yeah, having the Frost Armor will help you create Stasis Shards. It's awesome. Yeah, she's going nuts up there, sorry. Next on our list of Frost Armor fragments rework is Whisper of Fractures, with Stasis Shards granting melee energy as a base behavior. Relying on a difficult-to-read passive melee energy regeneration bonus felt like a place where we could reduce overlap and build in support for the new keyword. So Whisper of Fracture no longer increases melee energy regeneration when surrounded by enemies. Ooh, don't like that. Now grants a stack of Frost Armor when you shatter any frozen target with a melee attack. At school, I still would like to have that melee energy, though, but that's, shatter any frozen target with a melee attack. That's not even defeating, you gotta shatter them with a melee attack, so I don't know how I like that one, but we'll see how it works in practice. Our final fragment rework is Whisper of Torment. The fragment is a sleeper pick that does its job well, but its actual output has too many variables to keep track of, and required the player to be at a critical health for its largest bonus, so we're simplifying things a bit. Whisper of Torment, grenade energy gains are no longer dependent on your current health value. Base grenade energy regeneration amount per incoming damage event is increased from 5 to 7%, and while you have Frost Armor, energy per damage event increases from 7 to 12%. So that is going to be a little bit of a bonus to it, and you don't have to be almost dead for Whisper Torment to work. Would have worked more effectively. I didn't realize there was actually that the energy you got was dependent on how much health you had, so that's something I just learned. Finally, we've created one more brand new stasis fragment, Whisper or Reversal. I thought they said one, I guess this is two. Whisper Reversal is a close combat tool for our Frost Armor users, adding damage for additional crowd control if you're willing to take the risk. While you have Frost Armor, dealing or receiving physical damage, or physical melee, not projectile melee, damage slows your victim or attacker, so that could be good. Alright, let's talk about chatter. While we want to focus on chat or stasis to be primarily in high value crowd control abilities, in the current sandbox, shattering a frozen target doesn't always result in the payout that the other damage types are able to deliver with their capstone keyworks. Especially in high difficulty activities, misjudging your ability to capitalize on a freeze can lead to dire consequences. To help address this, we're bumping base shatter damage versus PvE combatants from 200 to 400. This does not affect stasis crystal detonations, but simultaneously we're fixing an issue where boss combatants receive double damage from auto shattering, so we don't quadruple the shatter damage. So they're basically doubling the shatter damage we're going to be getting on enemies, not from crystals, but from enemies. It says stasis shatters increased from 2 to 400, fix an issue where, I guess, boss shattering were being hit by 2 instances of shatter. I didn't realize that was a thing. And fix an issue where players in an active super would show immune damage fly out to an automatically breaking out of stasis freeze. That's it for the general updates. Let's check out the specific ones for each class. For Warlock, for Eyes for Bloats, they increase the maximum number of Seekers created before going on cooldown from 5 to 7. For Hunter, for Winter Shroud, slowing targets briefly increases your class ability regeneration rate. Bonuses reduced in PvP game modes, and now grants PvE damage reduction when active. Touch of Winter for the Glacial Grenade. Added an additional stasis crystal to the ring formation, increasing total count from 6 to 7. And the Glacial Grenade ring now forms over 0.2 seconds rather than instantly. For Cold Snap Grenade, no longer change an additional time when Touch of Winter is equipped. Instead, Seekers now duplicate when they freeze a target. And second and third Seeker chains now create a medium and large stasis crystal respectively, rather than every chain creating a small crystal. And for Silence and Squall, increase Squall maximum travel speed by 10%. Look out PvP. Squall Storm now slows down when any target is within its area of effect to reduce instances where it can overshoot its target. I've seen that happen quite a bit. And now, increase damage and slow tick rate versus PvE combatants by 40%. Bring its freeze time from approximately 0.8 seconds to 0.5 seconds. Now for a Titan for Shiver Strike, increase damage versus PvE combatants by 10%, increases size of melee target search area cone by 50%, increase maximum lunge tracker angular speed from 7%. This is all getting into some nitty gritty here. A Glacial Quake automatically begins sprinting when the player throttles forward. For Cryoclasm, removes a sprint time requirement. Cryoclasm now goes on a 4-second cooldown for 4 seconds after one extended slide. And for Diamond Lance, increase thrown Diamond Lance detonation radius from 3.5 to 5 meters. Increase Diamond Lance slam detonation to 8 meters from 6.75 versus PvE combatants. It doesn't say PvP, so I guess it's going to be different in PvP. Diamond Lance now shatters stasis crystals on direct impact. That's a big one. That's going to be nice. Reduce Diamond Lance pickup interaction time from 0.2 seconds to 0.1, matching strand tangles. Okay, that's good. I didn't even realize that it was that long. And increase Diamond Lance pickup interaction radius from 0.7 to 0.3, to 3 meters, matching strand tangles, so you don't have to be as close to it. Now, we're just going to go ahead and read the actual changes. We're going to read the entire thing because this is such an important thing happening right now. So this is Well of Radiance and Word of Dawn. Back in November, we briefly touched on Well of Radiance and Word of Dawn and how we were evaluating their place in the sandbox. With the launch of the final shape, we're making some larger changes to both of these supers to push them into more distinct identities and to reduce the fire and forget nature of Well of Radiance. Well of Radiance's core fantasy has always been a supercharged healing and powering rip combo, offering a rally point for your fire team during moments of focus. In its current form, its healing and damage resistance offer effective invulnerability, which removes any other defensive option from consideration on top of providing a sizable boost to your fire team's offensive output. We've chosen to push Well of Radiance further towards that offensive capability by allowing its radiance to persist for a short duration after players leave the well. We're also pulling back on its defensive output, both damage resistance and healing rate, by a significant margin. So, the effects are being changed too. Well now grants radiance for 8 seconds when exiting Well of Radiance area. Reduce player survivability while standing in the Will of Radiance aura. Reduces the healing per second from 100 to 50 points. It's basically been cut in half. It matches healing you get from Restoration times 2, which is still potent healing, but it's still cut in half from the healing we currently get from Will of Radiance. Increased heal on cast from 40 to 300 health points. So actually, okay, that's so on immediate cast that is healing. I didn't realize that. So increased heal on cast from 40 to 300 points. So that's a buff, but the rest of it not so much. Reduce damage resistance versus non-boss combatants from 40 to 20%. Reduce damage resistance from boss combatants from 40 to 10%. Note, damage resistance versus enemy players is unchanged. Increase the maximum orbs from defeating players from 4 to 5%. So they cut the healing in half, cut the damage from ads in half, and the damage resistance from ads in half, and cut the damage from boss resistance, or cut the boss resistance from 40% to 10%. That is a huge nerf there. That's bad. I'm going to talk about that in here a little bit, how I feel about it, but let me get through the Warded On here first. Warded On, on the other hand, is meant to be a highly defensive safe haven for you and your fire team. In practice, our combat encounters don't have a lot of opportunities for this type of gameplay to shine, so we're making a change to allow Ward of Dawn to provide defensive capability while fighting around the dome, not just in it. We're also reworking Armor of Light to make your current health state while in the Dome of Ward, or in the Dome of Ward of Dawn, more understandable, and we're pushing Ward of Dawn away from its current offensive capability unless you specifically build into it. Ward of Dawn, Armor of Light. Removed Armor of Light Overshield. Ward of Dawn now immediately applies a full Void Overshield to the caster and allies that enter its dome. Armor of Light now instead grants additional damage resistance to players inside the ward, 30% versus enemy players and 60 versus combatants. Effective health of players inside of Ward of Dawn remains roughly the same. Effective health of players inside Ward of Dawn is significantly lower than it was before versus players in PvP. So PvP has got nerfed. It can't be further increased by stacking Bastion Barricade inside the ward to get additional overshield. Okay, so yeah, so it's been against PvE combatants, it's the same. For PvP, it's been nerfed. Allies near the Ward of Dawn dome now have Void Overshields trickle over time, similar to the volume behind a Bastion Barricade. That part I like. No longer provides Weapons of Light by default. This behavior has been moved to the benefits of Saint 14's Helm. I hate that. The Ward of Dawn caster can now generate additional auras of power by defeating enemies with melee attacks in or near the Ward of Dawn dome. Additionally, we've seen that the supers above and the burst damage supers in the same tier have increasingly dominated the Crucible landscape due to their uptime. We do not want to maintain some textures across the While we do want to maintain some texture across a match when supers become available, the delta is currently a bit too high, especially in 3v3 game mode, 3v3 modes, so trials. To reduce this a bit, we're making a change to all supers with the founder shape. While different types of supers will have different passive recharge times, all supers will now use the same damage-based rechargers. This means no matter what super you have equipped, dealing a specific amount of damage to a specific enemy type will result in the same amount of super energy gained, whereas previously that value could vary by about 30%. This effectively increases real-world uptime of our roaming supers in the slowest recharge tier, and reduce the uptime of our fastest recharging burst supers. Now let's dive into each subclass for some more general balance changes. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Warded On first. Now, as far as I'm concerned, they could have fixed Ward of Dawn with one simple change, and that is allowing us to damage enemies outside of the bubble. If they made it to where we could shoot out of the bubble and damage enemies from there, that would have pushed Ward of Dawn to the top tier defensive ability that it could be. Don't give us any kind of, damage buff. Just make it to where if we're standing inside the bubble, we can shoot out of it. Now, that would be a huge change, obviously, but that is one that I think would be great. You could even make it to where we could still take some damage. Obviously, we still take damage inside of Ward of Dawn. It didn't have to block all shots coming in, but making it to where we could actually shoot outside of that damn thing would have been the perfect change to make. Now, how feasible that would be, I don't know. I'd say it's probably feasible. How likely we're going to get something like that ever, I don't know. Unfortunately, it's not a change I think we're going to get. But I think that would have been what needed to be done to make Ward of Dawn on par with our current Will of Radiance, if not better. The rest of the changes to Ward of Dawn, I can't really talk about. I do like that we are going to be getting an overshield once we are, if we're just close to it on the outside. I don't like the fact that we are not going to have weapons of light, which is going to further reduce the effectiveness of Ward of Dawn. I mean, it's going to be great defensive-wise, but our offensive capabilities for Ward of Dawn are just gone now. So that's unfortunate. Like I said, letting us shoot outside of the bubble letting us shoot and damage enemies from inside of it would have been the best change, in my opinion. It would have been amazing. And I think it would have definitely put Bubble Titans on the top of the list as far as defensive capabilities. But they screwed the pooch on that one. I don't like that change at all. I'm going to talk more neutrally about it here in just a minute. For Radiance, this was a gutted nerf. Now, I don't know why they decided to lean into the offensive aspect of Will versus the healing aspect. If it was me, I would have just gotten rid of any kind of bonus damage you would get standing in Will from Radiant or anything, and just keep the healing. Now, Restoration times 2 is nothing to snuff at. In fact, for like an entire season, Restoration times 2 was extremely powerful and that people basically cheese every encounter there was. So Restoration times 2, for a long amount of time, is still good. But it's still a reduction to the healing that Rip got. I mean, it basically does the same healing that a grenade can do, is what people are saying. And unfortunately, it is correct. It's basically a grenade that lasts about 30 seconds, and that's the healing grenade, by the way, is what I mean. And it's not great. And reducing the damage from bosses from 40% to 10%, that's the one I don't understand. Like, I could understand... I can't understand it at all. Like, I don't understand why they got rid of the resistance portion of it. Will of Radiance is supposed to be like a healing defensive type thing, or at the very least healing and damage reduction, why they would lean into the offensive portion of it. I don't get that. So, that being said, if I'm going to talk neutrally, as far as whether or not this was necessarily needed for gameplay, because let's be honest, Will of Radiance is overused. And if Will just didn't exist, it would be Ward of Dawn everybody would be using, because that's next in line. If I'm talking neutrally, I don't agree with the buffs or debuffs that happen here. I don't agree with the nerfs. Now, and I'm talking as a Sherpa right now too, so I'm trying to speak as neutrally as possible. I understand wanting to make other supers a priority and other abilities a priority. As of right now, I don't like the fact that teams basically force Warlocks to run a Will of Radiance. But I actually had to sit back and think, like, is that really something that is that big of an issue? And I actually had to go back and think about this neutrally. And I decided to think about whenever I'm running a Sherpa for a raid or something, how do I actually react to Will of Radiance? And I realized whenever I'm running a Sherpa, I always say and tell my people that if you got Will, great. If you don't, we don't need it. And typically whenever I Sherpa someone or Sherpa a group, we can get past whatever it is we're doing, normal raids at least, without a Will of Radiance or without a bubble. In fact, I like to go through, and whenever possible, I like to do Sherpas with just hunters, to prove you don't need Will of Radiance. So same with Divinity. I ask, hey, if you got Divinity, great. If you don't need it. The same with Will. So as far as whether or not it's needed, you don't need Will of Radiance, you don't need Divinity to get past this high-end content. You just don't. I don't like the fact that people were basically making other people run well. And I have seen people kick other Warlocks for not running well, and specifically asking for a Will of Radiance. So I don't like that. That is a bit narrow-minded. Now, there are some groups that I will admit that they were low enough on the skill gap or low enough on the skill tier that Will of Radiance might have been the only thing that gave them that little extra push to get past some raids. I mean, there are some groups they can get past the raids, but unfortunately things like Divinity and Will of Radiance were needed for them. They were just right at that, teetering at that border to where that Radiance and that Divinity pushed them over that edge and gave them the little extra bit of survivability and damage that they needed. And there are some people at the top tier that, again, that's like myself. I'm not trying to brag, but I am somebody who can get through a raid with an entire group without using Divinity or Will of Radiance. And for us, it's not going to matter at all. For us that don't care about Will of Radiance, don't care about Divinity, or don't need to have it, for us, it's not going to matter. It's going to matter for those lower tier skill people that needed that to help push them up to that. And again, it's not saying that they're bad players, by the way. If you get past the raid, my philosophy is if you clear a raid, you clear a raid. You're automatically better than anybody who can't get past that one as far as raids go. Now, that is going to hurt them a bit. So it really depends on where you fall in the skill gap. So we're going to have to come up with other ways to make up for that. Now, are there other skills you can use? Yes, you can do things like Barricade and Overshield for Titan. I do that a lot when I'm doing Sherpas. If I don't feel like running a Warlock, or I got a Titan on because I want to get some gear too while I'm Sherping, I'll have my Titan with me. And I use a Barricade. If we don't have a will down, that'll give us all Overshield. That's actually very effective. That's something you can actually use. We got a whole group of Hunter. We're actually take turns using something like Omnioculus and turning us all invisible to give us a temporary damage resistance. It doesn't last long because as soon as you fire, it's gone, but it does give us a damage resistance that makes us invisible. There are a lot of other support skills out there, but they have been overshielded because of Will of Radiance and Ward of Dawn. Now, same thing with War to Dawn. A Will of Radiance didn't exist, and in fact, before it did, we had War to Dawn and Weapons of Light, and that was the go-to. You know, put down your bubble, dip in, get your weapons of light, and do damage to the boss. That was the second runner-up. Again, there are other abilities you can use besides that. Do I think that these nerfs were needed? That's the part I'm on the fence on, to be honest about. I really am. Like, I don't want to, and I'm not saying this because I don't want people to get mad at me. I'm not saying that by any means. Like, if you want to get mad at me because you disagree with whether Will is nerfed or not, you can disagree with me. I mean, we all got different opinions on it, but I'm on the fence about this because I have two different viewpoints depending on what it is I'm doing. If I'm doing high-end rating and stuff, I understand that I don't need to have Will of Radiance. You know, I understand I can get past all this. I personally, and the people I play with, can get past it without Wills. But I also understand, having done Sherpas, that some people need to have that. Some people, that is the only thing that gives them that little extra boost. I mean, there are certain weapons that were giving them a little extra boost. I mean, with their skill level, what their experience level is. So I understand from both sides of the fence how people can feel about this. Overall, I think this is going to be better for the sandbox, yes. But I think we still need some other things buffed too. Like right now, I just see a lot of nerfs. But what I'm not seeing is the hunters getting a good support super too. Like as of right now, hunters don't really have a support super. We've been asking for that for a while. I don't really see any other subclasses with support supers. It's all damaging supers for the most part. Will and Ward are the two biggest support supers out there. Name one other real support super. I mean, yeah, technically speaking, you could say Deadfall is, but it also does damage and helps with damage output. Yeah, technically, I guess it's a support super, but it doesn't really buff you and your teammates like Will of Radiance and like War to Dawn do. So I'm really torn on this one. Now, do I think we're going to start seeing other tactics used besides Will and War to Dawn? Yes. Do I think people are still going to insist on Warlocks using Will of Radiance? I do. I absolutely do. I don't think people are going to stop using Will at all. I think they're just going to be dying Will and Will of Radiance even more and being pretty pissed off about it. So like I said, I definitely think they should have just kept the defensive and healing aspects of Will of Radiance and just gotten rid of the offensive portion of it. And I think that for War to Dawn, they should have just, even if they got rid, I'd be fine with them getting rid of Weapons of Light by default. Just let us shoot through the fucking War to Dawn, and I think that right there would have at least pushed that up there to what World of Radiance is at, if not past it. And then for hunters, I mean, we need to have some kind of support super. We still haven't gotten one yet. So that's how I feel about that. I know you guys are going to have different opinions on it. Like I said, I'm completely neutral on it. That's where I have to land on it because I can see both sides of the coin. I played at that lower end, or played with the lower end of people that are learning how to do raids and that do need that little bit of support that is just the little bit more that they need to get past that master dungeon or to get past that raid. And I play at that higher tier too, to where I can, grab some people from an LG. We all know what we're doing, or grab some people in my clan. We all know what we're doing. We're screwing around while we're doing all these mechanics, and we know exactly how to get past everything. We're like a group of all hunters or a group of all titans, screwing around using, all Nova bombs or something. So I played on both sides of it. So right now it lands me neutral because I see both ends of it. So I know I ran it a bit on this one, but this nerf has been probably one of the most hottest talked about topics regarding the ability changes. So that being said, I'm going to go through and just read off the actual specific ability changes for the rest of the stuff. I'm not going to get into the introductions on it. We're just going to go through each subclass and talk about the specific stuff going on. So, for Hunter, we've got Arc up next. For Hunter, for Arc Staff, heavy palm strike attacks and heavy air slam blind enemies. That's cool. For Disorienting Blow, they decrease the base cooldown timer from 100 to 90. And for Tempest Strike, we get an additional damage resistance versus PvE combatants when activated and linger for a short time after the attack, so that's pretty cool. For Warlock, for Lightning Surge, they added additional damage resistance versus PvE combatants when activated, lingering for a short time after the attack. And for Ball Lightning, my favorite melee, increased the final arming shape, shape by 30%. Increase the final arming shape. Okay, so I guess the size of it. Fixed an issue where the arming shape was offset upward higher than the maximum damage range of the projectile's detonation. Okay. And then for Chain Lightning, is what I'm thinking. I'm not Ball Lightning. No, yeah, that's it. Chain Lightning increased secondary chain projectiles base damage from 27 to 54. And for Titan, for Thunderclap, added additional damage resistance versus PvE combatants when activated, lingering for a short time after the attack. So they're upping up the defenses for Arc, it looks like. So for increased minimum damage versus PvE combatants by 20%, increased maximum by 30%, and increased maximum damage versus enemy players by 14%. Next up, for knockout. Increased knockout damage granted to powered melee attacks versus PvE combatants from 25 to 50%. No longer unstuns health regeneration on melee defeats. No longer unstuns health. This is it, right? No longer unstuns health regeneration on melee defeats. Now instantly grants a chunk of healing that scales with the type of player or target defeated. So for a player, 30 health points. For a minor combatant, 50. Major, 75. And for a champion and higher combatants, 100 health. For Touch of Thunder and Storm Grenade, it says increase tracking level speed when targeting PvE combatants by between 0.5 and 1 meter per second, increasing with the storm's lifetime. And then for Touch of Thunder, for Lightning Grenade, it says now applies Jolt after the first damage event rather than prior. For grenades, for Storm Grenade, increase damage versus PvE combatants by 20%. And for, there we go, on Touch of Thunder, variant damage is unchanged. For Secret Grenade, increased damage from PvE combatants by 50%. For Arc Bolt also increased by 15%. Sorry, my voice is starting to go, so I know it's hard to understand me now. I'm going to try to talk a bit slower while I get through the rest of this. For Arc Fragments, Spark of Recharge. Ability regeneration bonus now persists until the player returns to full shields, rather than deactivating as soon as shields begin to recharge. I wonder if that'll let you just continuously heal if you can keep taking damage. That could be interesting. Spark of Beacons. Now also triggers on defeating targets with arc power ammo weapons while amplified. Spark of Frequency. Now also grants 15 weapon stability on powered melee hits, in addition to its reload benefits. Now we got these silver subclasses for Hunter. Lightweight Knife now has 2 melee charges. That's pretty cool. Increase the throw animation by 33%. Reduce suppression time between throws, so both knives can be thrown very quickly back to back. Sorry, it's so much going on. The additional melee charges does not stack with Ophidia Space due to the exotic's unique energy recharge behavior. We'll be monitoring this and evaluating how things are playing once things go live. Knock 'em down has been changed. It says reduce internal timer on throwing knife refund from 1 to 0.2 seconds for knock 'em down. Actually, that explains something. I didn't realize there was an internal knife cooldown, so that explains why I kept losing my knife. It's important to read, folks. Important to read, because that was an issue I was having for a while. For Golden Gun, and this is one that was nerfed because of the fact you can actually stack golden guns and basically continuously get them over and over again. In fact, I'm going to read the whole thing out here so you see what the nerf is. So, Samurai teams have a niche strategy of hunters fully stacking Golden Gun marksmen to instantly befriend each other's supers with the orbs of power created on precision hits in combination with the additional super energy granted on orb pickup by certain skills. While we always appreciate this kind of build craft ingenuity, this level of super chaining isn't very healthy for the game. They say they appreciate it, but then they turn around and nerf it. So, again, you're contradicting yourself. Therefore, reducing the strength of the orbs created by Golden Gun, marksman's precision hit perk, and making some target adjustments to specific combination noted above. So, the changes they made for marksman: reduce strength of orbs of power pickup on precision hits as follows. When hitting non-boss enemies, reduce strength from 75 to 0.5 of a normal super orb of power. When hitting boss enemies, reduce the strength from 75 to 0.4 of a normal orb of power. Ooh, boss has been a big hit. When hitting boss enemies while starting skills is equipped, reduce strength from 0.75 to about 0.35 of a normal orb or normal super orb of power. So with starter skills, they gave it the biggest nerf. So the rest of the things, we got Titan for Consecration. Consecration Slam Attack now shatters stasis crystals. That's going to be huge for Prismatic. Ignitions generated by Consecration now deal 20% additional damage to PvE combatants. Fixed an issue where Consecration Slam Attack was sometimes unable to damage floating combatants while they were grounded. Fixed an issue where Consecration's intended PvE damage resistance was not being applied. For the Hammer of Soul, increased projectile submunition count when Soul Invictus is not equipped as follows. If the projectile detonates within the first 0.7 seconds of its lifetime, it now creates 4 shrapnel submunitions up to 3. If the projectile detonates after the first 0.7 seconds of its lifetime, it now creates 6 shrapnel up from 5. Note, when Soul Invictus is equipped, only 3 shrapnel submunitions are created regardless of flight time. Shrapnel submunitions now deal increased damage when Soul Invictus is not equipped, with the damage increasing after the first 0.7 seconds of the projectile's lifetime. So much to talk about. And then for Swarm Grenade, this is actually one that was brought up because of hunters. Finally, a few weeks ago, we revealed the abilities coming with each prismatic subclass, and some hunters raised an eyebrow at the inclusion of Swarm Grenade. I did too, except for the fact that it scorches enemies, so it does play into the Stylus Executioner. That's the only reason I didn't complain about it. But I guess some other hunters had some issues, so we agreed, and we have boosted Swarm Grenade's ease of use and PvE damage output to make sure it shines in that kit. Increased tracking shape size from 4 meters to 6 meters. Increased linger duration from 7.8 seconds to 10 to 11 seconds. And increased damage versus PvE combatants by 20%. Buff across the board. Now, for Void subclasses, this has got one that I'm very interested in talking about. For Hunters, Snare Bomb. Increased linger duration of smoke after detonation from 3 to 5 seconds. Now applies small damage over time to enemies in the smoke, which increases in strength the longer they remain in the smoke. Wombo combo, here we come. Increased linger duration of the smoke after detonation from 1.5 seconds to 6 seconds. Now applies Snare Bomb's damage over time to enemies caught in its smoke, and fixed an issue where trappers' ambush smoke could be obstructed by ground geometry. So it's this, Stylus Executioner's weaken effect can now be applied by glaive melee attacks. If I'm reading this correctly, and if it works the way I believe it does, you will now be able to take a glaive and proc Stylus Executioner with the glaive's normal melee, turning you invisible again. This is the build thing. This is the change that I was hoping we'd be able to get. I actually hoped they would just change the glaive to make the melee count as an elemental attack, so it would work with Stylus Executioner and save volatile rounds. This should still work just as well, but it's only going to really benefit hunters. Now, obviously, it's and when I say benefit hunters, I mean, I would still rather have the glaive, have the melee, count as a, elemental attack. But as far as the personal build I wanted to make, this is going to be a huge buff, and I hopefully will be able to make that, glaive invisibility build. But I'm getting tired and I got to finish this. We're almost done. We got a couple more to get through and then we're going to be fine. For Titan, for shield throw, they increase the maximum bounce from 4 to 5 and increase the lifetime to 4 seconds. They increase the tracking on it and increase the PvE damage by 20%. For offensive bulwark, can now only extend Void's overshield timer to its normal maximum duration to prevent an issue where players could get into a bad timer state, and now regenerates a small portion of your active overshield with each melee defeat. For Warlock, Chaos Accelerant, Charge Magnetic Grenade increases maximum intensity of physic knockback by 10%, increased damage versus PvE combatants by 20%, and now passively decreases your magnetic grenade's cooldown by 10% while Chaos Accelerant is equipped. Pocket Singularity, increased detonation damage versus PvE combatants by 50%. Pocket Singularity has always been one of those melees that has always been kind of useless in my opinion. Doesn't really offer anything extra, so I am glad we're going to be getting that boost. I probably still won't use it versus other effects, though. For Noble Bomb, Cataclysm variant, increased seeker count from 4 to 6, and fix an issue where seekers could impact the environment on creation. That's a good buff right there. And for the Vortex variant, they increase the linger duration from 7 seconds to 10 seconds. That increases its damage, obviously. And fix an issue where the linger visual effects were shutting off early. So basically a blanket buff to all the Noble Bombs. Next for Hunter, and this part I'm going to go ahead and read because it's important. Thread Runners and Snaring Slam has remained popular throughout Strand's life and has seen a small bump in PvE popularity following the increased uptime post 7.35. However, it's currently too powerful against other players, with a detonation radius that is very difficult for victims to understand, similarly reducing its overall effect versus players. So it says versus players, not versus enemies. So they basically turn it into a cone. Detonation volume versus enemies is now a cylinder with a 6.5 meter radius, rather than a sphere with a 8 meter radius. This results in fewer instances of victims correctly attempting to counterplay by jumping, but being caught by the ensnaring slam detonations high in the air. They also decrease threaded spikes damage versus players. Reduce damage versus enemy players from 79 to 70, and catching a threaded spike no longer breaks invisibility, although that part is a buff, so that's pretty cool. Weaver's Call, new behavior. Defeating a target with strand damage now has a chance to generate a perch threadling with a higher chance of generation from defeating more powerful targets. This damage can come from any source, including other thread links, so awesome. Now, this is going to be a nerf to grapples in general, and this is one from Strand that I want to talk about. This, to me, is just as important as the nerf to, well, probably not just as important for the community, but to me, it's just as important as a nerf to Will and to Bubble. Before we go into Berserker, let's take a pit stop and talk about grapple. I'm going to go ahead and skip all this shit and just tell you what it is. They basically changed it to where you do not get your full grapple back from tangling to the grapple point. It says grapple tangles no longer fully refresh your duration when grappled to. Now increase your duration by a maximum of 5 seconds per grapple, reducing to a maximum of 1 second added after 5 consecutive grapples to the same grapple tangle. Basically, you're not going to be getting a full grapple recharge back, which is a huge nerf to grapple points. That was one of the main things that were cool about hunters using Widow Silk. So if I'm understanding this right, we've basically been screwed on that one because just the grapple melee was pretty cool. We can no longer do that, so that sucks. Something else too for PvP. Additionally, grapple melees will no longer be able to be used after firing your weapon. This is primarily intended to reduce the number of difficult to understand grapple melees after death in Crucible. I guess before, when you use your grapple melee, you could actually fire your weapon and then get your melee off afterwards. No longer will you able to do that. So it's either use your melee and then fire your weapon, or as soon as you fire your weapon, it's going to take you out of that melee state. So keep that one in mind. That one's for PvP. I guess you can do it for PvE too, but I never seen anybody do that. For Titan, End of the Fray. Reduce melee energy regeneration scalar from 4 to 3 in PvE activities and unchanged in PvP activities. Banner War got nerfed. Banner War. Reduce maximum timer from 30 seconds to 24 seconds. Melee, glaive melee, and super damage bonus now have diminishing returns with the Sentinel steps as follows. Melee bonus decreased from 1.4 to 1.15. Glaive reduced from 1.25 to 1.125, and super from 1.4 to 1.2. Melee and glaive melee bonuses now have diminishing returns with Worm God's Caress 2. And it goes from 1.4 to 1.1 based on stat count. And the glaive melee is 1.4 to 1.05. These are some weird numbers based on stat count. And then finally, for Frenzy Blade, they reduced the forward offset for melee lunge target point from 0.4 meters to 0.18 meters. I guess the lunge was causing some unintended issues. So, in conclusion, that's everything we have for now. We're extremely excited to see how the next Era of Destiny 2 sandbox unfolds after the launch of the final shape. And we'll be closely monitoring the impact of these changes. As always, keep the feedback coming, and we'll see you next time. Now, my final thoughts on the Well of Radiance and Word of Dawn nerfs. Now, again, I was thinking about this one for a while. The way Bungie's designed their raids and their dungeons, unfortunately, you still have to be very close together a lot of times, and that's where Well of Radiance came in handy with some of the lower tier groups. Now, again, if you are a higher skill player, you probably don't need Will. You can kind of dip in and out of the mechanics and still survive. Let's take War Priest, for example. I mean, you have to be very close to each other. You got to stay around the person with the buff to be able to damage the boss. Unfortunately, the boss has got a huge AoE attack, so it's hitting all you guys at once, and it is a very, very powerful attack. So you need some kind of buff to survive that. Otherwise, you all have to run away and then kind of come back together to damage the boss, or you got to have to like run around together. To avoid that. That, unfortunately, is a mechanic. Like, Will of Radiance's effectiveness is a product of Bungie's boss design. Most of the bosses that you're going to be damaging, you have to be close together for. Even something like Sisters and Oryx, or even Oryx himself, you got to be close together. Now, granted, in those two encounters, you're invincible during those encounters because you're in a shield that gives you invincibility, but you're still close together. War Priest is another one in that same raid where you're close together, but you're not invincible, but you have to be close together to damage the bosses. Now, there are other instances such as Crota where you don't have to be stacked up. In fact, Will of Radiances and Bubbles will actually break doing that. But then you have something like Iriyut right before that where, yeah, you can actually, that's probably one of the better examples I can think of where you don't actually have to be stacked up to damage the boss, but there's still so much stuff going on that it does help. Now, there are a ton of ads around, so Will of Radiance and stuff like that do help, but there are other ways you can increase your defensiveness. For example, putting down a barricade with overshield does help. I mean, that is something I do when I got groups and they don't have a Well of Radiance or they don't want to run bubble. I will put down a barricade up on my Titan, and that will help keep you alive. I mean, there are other options you have. That being said, I don't see Well and bubble falling off. I really don't. I still think they're going to be needed. I think they're just going to be less effective, but they're still going to be effective. I mean, really, they didn't get rid of the bonus damage for Will of Radiance. In fact, they kind of boosted it a little bit. They're going to be able to keep that radiant by exiting the pool. All they really did was reduce the effectiveness of the healing. Probably all that's going to happen is you're going to have to toss down a healing grenade as a warlock while you got the will down, and that's really it. I don't see that not being used as often. For Bubble, again, I think Bubble's not going to be used nearly as often now unless it's for some kind of defensive activity. I think had they made it to where you could shoot through your Bubble, that would have put it next to, if not above, the Will of Radiance. I mean, that's still something I don't understand why they haven't done that. It seems like such a very obvious change they can make that they just have not implemented. So, I mean, no, I do think that you may end up using the Titan shield, you know, putting up the over, or I forgot what it's called, the banner shield. That one's still a very good one. I don't see used as much nowadays. So that's, I can see that one being used a lot. I can see that one being used maybe more than Well of Radiance. I mean, people might come back to using that one a bit more. I don't think it gets used nearly as often as it should be. But I don't think this is actually going to get people to use other tactics as much as they hope it does. So hopefully some of these other tactics do. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe more tactics will be used more than these, but I don't see Will's use dropping off at all. I just see people complaining about it more. So that being said, that's going to be all for me for today, guys. Again, that was a very long one. That is the last of the bigger videos that are coming out right now. Hopefully we get more information coming out soon. I am liking that they are putting out so much information in the coming days. We do, of course, have the second part of that viaduct coming out later on. I don't know when this video is going to be coming out. Hopefully I can get this put out on the 24th, so that means that the second part of the viaduct will come out today. If not, it'll probably be around the time the viaduct comes out. So expect that video from me from then. That being said, I'm going to get out of here. Please leave a like on the video if you like what you saw. If you love what we're doing, please sub to the channel, and I will see you all on the next video.